you ready?
Hello, everybody. It's another backlog, another Crafts and Vindy backlog. Have we done it? No, I don't know if we've done a backlog, just the two of us, actually.
No, because
we are now.
The first backlog since the backlogs changed was Ava.
That's come out, right? Not that we've recorded, but that's
that is the first one that I think. The only other one that's
Kimetsu no
not
Yaiba.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about Kimetsu. Okay, you're right.
Yeah, so they're gonna find out about that before,
because this is coming out soon.
And Hyoka are still in the right.
Hyoka. So Hyoka is done.
Would have come out today if not for the fact that I wanted JoJolion out.
Right.
Oh, cool, you're done with it. Cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, actually. But
I finished it. I'll upload it probably next week sometime. Yeah, it's done editing.
Okay.
It'll come out. It'll come out next week from whatever.
Yeah, I just figured JoJolion sooner because of relevancy.
It just
right?
ended.
It's closer. Exactly. Right. So yeah, we read JoJolion, which I guess when was the last time you actually touched anything JoJo's Bizarre Adventure before rereading JoJolion or reading JoJolion for the first time?
Yeah, I mean some of it was a reread. We'll get when we get into it to where I had stopped reading the first time. Because I stopped reading right before it got really good, and I started it literally was the arc after I stopped, because I was on an arc. I was I'm not feeling this too much. Stopped. I remembered exactly where I stopped. The next chapter is a fucking great character shows up, and then it's just great from there. So I was just dumb. But I read. So I mean, I guess when I touched anything JoJo's was the Part 5 anime I watched weekly.
Okay, yeah. See, for me it was Part 4.
But yeah, so in between parts 4 and 5, I read all of JoJo's. Went back and read the parts that I'd seen in the anime, and then read everything else. And I mean, read everything up to Part 8. Read a little bit of Part 8. Stopped. And that was when, and then, so I was I had read Part 5 when the anime came out, watched that anime, and then haven't really touched JoJo's since then.
Right. See, because I read JoJo out of order. Because I think I did try Part 1 first, but I really only got into it with Steel Ball Run. And I'm pretty sure I did reread Steel Ball Run. Maybe I did. I hope so.
Mother's Basement was right.
I think I even talked about that on that.
I think
AWB.
you did. And I think I gave you shit for
honestly, going back to it, JoJolion was really weird because I kept up with it from chapter 1 for a fair chunk of it. So I was kind of shocked rereading it because it felt like it was going by so quickly.
Right,
because I was reading years worth of material in hours.
Right.
Or, so it was just it felt like a really quick read, partly because of that reason, I think. And it is kind of a quick read. So, and the other thing that, I saw an advertisement for the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. And I was oh no, I'm withering away to dust.
That is something I do want to talk about. Maybe more when we get into it. But, there were ads for, the first part of the JoJo's.
Every single part.
Every part of the JoJo's anime that's happened so far. So 5 parts of it happened during JoJolion's run, which I think almost basically says that for sure the anime is going to have to wait on part 9 to finish to adapt it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is cool. It's cool that, because even though it feels right, the JoJo's anime has been going for 9 years now because it started in 2012. That's all within one part, which is really kind of fast when you think about that for the anime. So
yeah, but it's just wild to think oh yeah, well, especially because when I started JoJolion, JoJo had its fan base, but it was much smaller,
right? Much,
and now
smaller.
I would describe it as normie tier, as far as popularity wise, where I have friends who aren't super into anime who have watched all of JoJo, right? It's a kind of a big deal. It wasn't until I started reading it again, I just remembered oh god, I read this it's kind of weird because even though I wasn't reading it every month, I started it around when it started and I ended it around when it ended. So because I caught up right before I stopped right before the final stretch, and then I read that final stretch around when the last chapter came out. So
yeah, because I would say that I think JoJo's is it's like, so it's not on like that super normie tier, right, of like Dragon Ball, Ghibli movies, and like Naruto probably at this point up there. And I would say it's not on that next level of MHA, Kimetsu, like Jujutsu Kaisen,
Attack on Titan.
Yeah, I think it's still that like, next level down. Like it's one of the main ones, like that next level down. Like I would say One Punch Man's at that level as well. Like anything, like JoJo's the kind of thing where most people who are like passively into anime have seen JoJo's.
Right, if not all of it, at least some of it, right?
Or know about jokes or memes surrounding JoJo's, right? Because JoJo's is kind of fucking wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, it's really memeable.
That even before the anime, it was still like, I feel largely known, and like people found out about it through memes. Like on 4chan, it was the meme, which came from a Flash animation, which was stick figures using stand attacks. And if you have no context for JoJo's, especially the last one being the world, just comes across as really random, because like he just flies off screen and comes down with like a road roller, and he does the and it's like really weird and random and funny, and that like got people interested in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and that was kind of like that
right,
part of like how I found about it in the mid 2000s. Which because I did get into it like to a degree. Like I watched the OVA and I read some of the manga. Like it didn't really click with me until I read Steel Ball Run, but I was in some ways consuming JoJo's Bizarre Adventure back in high school. So like 2006 to 2009. Give or take. So
yeah, and it's not surprising that it had like what you would probably consider like a cult following in the West before the anime skyrocketed its popularity in the West, purely because it's so popular in Japan, right? It's referenced, and so like it is that like upper normie tier in Japan. It's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so because of that, it bleeds over into so many other media.
Right, like that in itself has become a meme in the, like, is that a JoJo reference? Like,
right.
Because it does get referenced a lot.
Yeah, I can't think of a single series off the top of my head that references, like, otaku culture and otaku media that doesn't have JoJo references. Right?
Right.
Even, like, among recent ones we talk about, both Roboco and Gintama have many JoJo references, It's just such a common thing to reference because it's so popular and it's so known that
right, and it's got a lot of iconic stuff going on that people like instantly recognize, especially part 3 in particular.
Right.
So
how do you before we I guess specifically talk about part 8, how do you feel about JoJo's as a whole? And part of the reason is because I part 8 changed how I feel about it as a whole. But how do you feel about JoJo's like as a whole?
See, because I've always liked it, and at a time I would have considered Steel Ball Run one of my favorite manga. That's not to say it isn't. It's more to say that I need to like reread all of JoJo, because like when I read it, there weren't good scans for all of part 5. Yeah. So like I think part 4 and part 6 still had good scans. But like I didn't read the entirety of part 4 in Duang translation, the infamous Japanese to Chinese to English. That was right. Lots of memes there.
But you probably had to read part 5 in Duangs, didn't you?
At least some of it, right? Because it was getting retranslated, but it wasn't complete when I decided, fuck it, I'm just gonna read all of JoJo, because I still hadn't. So it's like, like I said, I kind of read it. I read parts like 1 through 3, and then 7. Completed at some point, and then I eventually went back and finished parts 4 through 6. And then, again, I'd still watch the anime, so I've gone through at least those 4 parts again, at least twice, but I just need to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, I think especially part 5, you'd probably get a lot more, because I don't know how you feel about part 5, but part 5 is like one of my favorite parts.
See, part 5 I definitely didn't care about, I can't blame myself too much.
I mean, I think
because of what, how I read it at
not
the
enjoying
time.
a manga because it has bad scans is like a completely fair complaint, because if you can't tell what's going on, of course you're not going to like it.
No, yeah, you talked about that with Hitman, right?
Reborn Crafts, please.
There's another manga named Hitman by your favorite author that I don't want to mix it up
with.
no,
it's not just that. It literally is. I think the manga is just called Reborn.
I've never read it. Okay,
I think
I'm sorry.
The Katekyo Hitman Reborn's only the anime. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, the manga's only. Okay, whatever. Never mind. Okay, whatever.
But yeah, anyway, so like, yeah, because so for regards to JoJolion, it's the only part I've read anytime recently. So, like, even though I still feel like if I went through it again, I'd still probably like part 4 a lot, for example. And I'd probably still like Steel Ball Run a lot. But, you know, I really don't. So, but I don't know what an actual, like, part rank. I could see myself liking part 2 way less because I think I have it at a 9 right now. And part of me is like, I can see myself appreciating part 1 a lot more. So I really have no idea where it would end up. And when I do read all of JoJo, my plan is to reread JoJolion and then catch up to part 9 as much as will have come out, because it's starting this month. Actually, I'm pretty sure. Like, there's no break.
I thought he was taking a 1 month break and then starting, or couple month break. Maybe
it's 1 month break, but
yeah, I think it was described as a short break before he started. Okay, so gotcha. I would expect it to part 9 to start this year.
Yeah, exactly. So I won't be reading it until I reread JoJolion after having read parts 1 through 7. But even without having reread JoJo, like, I still recognized a lot of, like, the references and imagery and names, especially what were kind of important, and like, I still enjoyed it. And if I had to rank it, I think I'd say it's maybe my 4th or 5th favorite part, so it's around the middle. But that's, again, only accounting for my older rankings of the series. So because I don't know how I'd feel about those parts if I reread them. So so like, I guess, so in a way it's like, yeah, I guess it's my favorite and my least favorite JoJo part because it's the only one I care to rank right now. So yeah. But anyway, you go ahead.
So JoJo's is weird for me because I got into it through the anime. I've actually seen the part 1 and 2 anime 3 times. And then read each part once. And the only reason I've seen it 3 times is because I watched it and then I wanted to get my brother into JoJo's because I thought it was something he liked. It is something he likes a lot. My older one. So I watched part 1 anime with him. I didn't watch part 3 with him. And then we watched part 4 separately. And then he liked it enough to try to get my sister into it. So him and my sister have watched it together. And to be fair, I didn't watch all of parts 1 and 2 with them, but I saw, like, sporadically. And this was more recent. Yeah. This was, like, after I'd read it. But I didn't really count it because, like, I would watch a couple episodes, or, like, I'd be in voice with the stream up on one monitor while playing games on another. So, like, I wasn't really watching.
Right, because you already knew what happened.
Yeah, I was there to talk to them and to hear her reactions to Dio throwing Jonathan's dog in the oven, right?
Or Jack the Ripper coming out of a horse, or something like that, right? Like,
or like for the, like, I think I watched, like, the AC/DC fight because I fucking love that fight. But but like, I would say that, like, overall, and I would still feel this way. I do want to reread it, but until I read part 8, I probably would have described JoJo as a whole as, like, I like it, or I like parts of it. I don't like all of it, but there are parts that I find really good. Because, like, to go through quickly, it's like, I think, like, part 1 is good, but I don't, like, super love it. I don't super love part 2. I don't really like, I think part 3, like, drags for me so much. It's, like, so monster of the weeky that, like, after a point, I just, like, it feels like a slog to get through in, like, the middle section. I love part 4. It's my second favorite part. I love part 5. It's my 4th favorite part now, but it was my 3rd favorite for a long time. I personally do not care for part 6. I didn't like it when I first read it. Maybe I'd like it more on a reread, but I didn't like it the first time. And I fucking love part 7. Like, part 7 was, like, one of my favorite manga for a while. I constantly talk about how much I fucking love Johnny.
No, it was like, see, now you like JoJolion, but when you were starting it, you said, wow, it's amazing. Johnny was only in JoJolion for, like, a chapter, and he's already the best character, or something like that.
Well,
right?
I'll get into it. He was so fucking good in that one chapter, though. Like, oh my God. But I can't say he's the best character in the manga. He's not gonna, see, because, like, I was worried, because if you didn't like JoJolion, then I'm not a huge fan of having to be put on defensive for a part that I don't like. Like, it's like a light 8. Like, I like it, but I don't, like, love it, right? Like, I really like it. Like, and it's a great score, but, you know, it's like, right, you're not passionate enough about it to, like, really defend it, you know?
Right, even though, because I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I like Josuke and Yasuho and Josuke, the Hijikatas. What's the name of the family? But or I think, is there not another syllable in there?
No, it's Hijikata. Higashikata. I'm sorry, it is Higashikata.
Higashikata. Yeah, I thought there was, like, a she in there. Right. Higashikata. Thank you. Yeah, I like the family. Like, it's good for sure. It's just, like, you know, some people seem to really like it, and I saw other people had some problems with it because there were, because, like, I guess or were you about done with your history with JoJo? Shall we actually talk about JoJo?
Well, I was just
going
to say really quickly, part 8, I think, is kind of, like, I like part 8 a lot. It's tied with the other Morio part for my second favorite part, I think. And that won't change until I reread part 4.
Right.
But I fucking like it a lot. And now I would say that because I would give because like before it was like over half of JoJo's I don't love, right? So I don't know if I would call myself like a JoJo fan. Now I like 50% of it I would give an 8 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like now I'm at a point where like, yeah, I would say that like I really like JoJo's now. I'm a JoJo's fan. And part 8 changed that because it also, like, reading part 8 has me thinking a lot more about the series and, like, thinking about things I like about the series, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that's, like, the big thing for me is, like, I really like this manga, and so I'm probably going to go on tangents about how much I love Josuke, but...
Yeah, no, so anyway, I guess to talk about JoJolion itself, you know, it keeps up the tendency for Araki to just kind of, like, change the formula in some way with every part, because, like... You know, it's a mystery, and I felt like, you know, every, like, stand battle was also kind of worked into, like, you know, the general progress they're making with the, you know, trying to uncover what happened, and, you know, so I thought that was, like, interesting how, you know, it's still different after all these, you know, while it's still being JoJo, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what made it, like, a kind of a quick read, because I felt like a lot of the stand battles were, like, connected to each other, right? Like, there were some disconnected ones, but even they still, like, mattered in some way, like the road, the street,
Shakedown Road.
Yes, Shakedown Road, thank you. But I definitely think the stand battles were, like, less like complex than a lot of the older ones, at least as far as my memory goes. Maybe that is my recency bias.
No, I agree.
Memory, but
I think I don't know if I would say less complex, because I do think in some ways some of these stand battles have gotten so complex. Like, and I love this fight, but Ozone Baby is fucking insane, right?
That's pretty yeah.
And I think that, like, that's somewhat to the detriment, because, like, when I think about, like, some of the best, because I think part 5 is my favorite stand battles, and when I think about, like, the best battles, it's like, oh, this guy has a moss, and if he's above you altitude wise, you get covered with a moss that will cover you and you'll die, right? It's a kind of a more simple power that is, you know, a little out there, but, like, it's understandable, right? Or this guy can shrink himself. Or, you know, this guy digs through the ground. You know, and some of them are, like, you know, more complicated, but, you know, I think it's more so, like, it's kind of a simple idea that is used very, like, interestingly, right? Like, even to compare, like, main JoJo stands, right? Like, in part 5, Giorno's stand is he has the ability to give things life, but it's used in insane ways to be really creative in these fights.
No, yeah, the main character's powers are usually, like, really, like, versatile, and, you know, like, even Josuke has some of that, but...
He does, but right. And I love Soft and Wet. I think it's my favorite main JoJo stand, but it's, like, the soap bubbles are an insane concept, and so I think because of that, sometimes, like, I don't love the part 8 fights, but I love everything outside of that, and I think when the outside stuff ends up working its way into the fight is when the fights get good. But there are definitely fights where it's like, I feel like it's so in the fight, and I didn't love them.
Mm-hmm. And, like, yeah, there were definitely some, like, tricks or, you know, ways that the fights were resolved that I thought were cool. But yeah, you know, I definitely didn't, like, quite feel as strong. Like, I think, yeah, what mostly helped them work for me was how, like, they overall just kind of worked into the mystery and such, or, like, worked around it, rather, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and so, and I think, like, you know, there's also a big thing is now there's a lot of stands that are not, like, they're non-attacking based, right? Like, when you think of, like, the main cast stands, right? Yasuho's stand isn't attacking based. Norisuke's stand isn't attacking based. Oh my god, what's his name? Tsurugi's isn't attacking based.
Right.
Daya's isn't. Joshu uses his stand, like, twice. Like, because I think the stands are less action oriented, and I think that that's good for the series, but I think because the stands are less action oriented, it means that the fights have, like they do have less importance, I think, overall, right? Like, when you have parts 3 and 5 especially, where the stands are almost all based around, you know, fighting or action in somewhat. I think the only one I can think of that isn't, or it can't be immediately you can think of a use for action as like Abachio's. He's the one who has the stand that he like copies what someone does.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember who I'm talking about. Long hair in the gang, his stand, like, he'll like copy someone's actions in the past if he like catches onto him, kind of. It's actually kind of similar to Norisuke's stand, to King Nothing.
Okay,
but,
yeah, I don't remember Part 5. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you described some of the Part 5 stands earlier, and I'm like, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah, and so I think that, I mean, there's less action in the stands, and there's less, I think, action in the part, but it is like more, because, I think people call Part 4 a mystery, right? And it kind of is in the sense that, like, they're looking for someone, but I think this is the mystery part.
No, 100%, because it's more about just a gradual, like, finding out what's going on, doing the, making some deductions and like, okay, we need to go here and talk to this person, and then they try to do that. Oh, but stand battle happens because someone doesn't want them to do that, right? Where, like, yeah, Part 4, always felt like, I've described it before, it felt more like the slice of life part in that, like, every stand battle is also, like, if you remove the stands, it's something that could, like, actually happen.
Right, exactly. And this time the stands were a roadblock between them and information. Every time. Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, there were some, like, especially the ones that Joshua was involved in were more just about, like, more about the ideas, I guess, and, like there was Milagro Man, the one with the money. Like, that didn't have anything to do with the story, but, it was here's this thing that happens that he has to deal with, and we get to see that battle basically happen. Right? So, but there was maybe only, like, 2 of those, right? Like, even Shakedown Road, like, it wasn't separating him from information necessarily.
But he got information out of it.
And the mechanics came back in a few ways, I'm pretty sure. So, like, just the like, it had to do with, some major plot stuff, right? So, yeah, it's, exactly. But,
yeah, and so there's, like, a lot of stuff in that I think is, like, really good. And I think it's great because, it's one of those things where it's, like, it sounds weird for me to say, like, this is my second favorite part, but then also say, yeah, I don't think the stand battles are that good, except for, really, I would say there's 2, like, super, super good ones, and then 2 ones that I think are pretty good. But, like, which in 110 chapter manga, where the longest fight is, I think it is, like, 20 chapters, but outside of that, they're generally pretty short. The
last one's always the longest, right?
It might sound like that's, like, crazy that I don't like a majority of the fights, but they're not that important, so it's fine.
No, yeah, like one thing that is important is Josuke and Yasuho are they're good. They're both good. I like their relationship. Like, they're funny and they work with each other well, and yeah. Like, again, I'm not gonna say best romance in JoJo because I just haven't read most of it.
And also, yeah, it is a romance, but then with the way it ends and there's a lot more going on there than just, like, the fact that they're a romance, but they are really good. And I do like that it is a romantic edge on the JoJo and the sidekick, partnership, right? Because as much as I want to talk about how Giorno and Mister are gay for each other and how Johnny and Gyro literally straddle each other in a volume cover, so they're basically having sex, there isn't actually a romantic edge there. But with this one, there is, and it's, like, very important. And it even ties into kind of some of the stuff at the end with the villain, and I think it's, like, really good.
Mm-hmm. And particularly, I like the moment where Yasuo sees Josuke, and she's, like, super relieved to see him, and she's basically crying, and then Josuke goes, Tsurugi! And, like, ignores her.
Completely ignores her because he's on a mission, and Tsurugi knows, like, the information that he needs.
But then they do, like, notice each other, and they both start crying like idiots because they're actually just so happy to see each other, and it's so good! Like, it's but it's funny. And, they're good, and I like them.
I agree. I love the entire Higashikata family. The only one who I could get away with saying I don't like, you're not supposed to like him, is Joshu.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, Joshu's the dick. And there's another member of the family who is also a dick, but he's great, and I fucking love him.
Yeah, we won't say names.
Yeah,
because,
we won't. I love the family. I love the way that they treat the family. Where I don't even feel like this is spoilers because it's like 20 chapters in that it plays its hand with this. Where, like, at first you think the family is gonna be the villains, and then they're not. And, like, Norisuke is, like, a cool ass dude.
Right, like they legitimately accept Josuke as family. Like, yeah, they're good.
God, yes. I can't wait to go all into that when you talk about spoilers, because it's I love it. God, it's so good, and I love the family. This part also has like the hottest girls in JoJo's out of nowhere, right? Like, there's maybe like a hot girl apart if you really wanted to get into it in previous parts. But part 8's just like, it's got Yasuho, it's got Daya, it's got Hado, it's got Nijimura. And there's like other girl characters I know I'm forgetting. Like almost even the guys.
Kadara or
Yeah. And then with the guys, there's fucking Josuke, Jobin, fucking what's his name? Oh my god. Fruit Appraiser. Ray.
Oh, Rai?
Yeah. Great as well. Like, Araki really just said, I'm just going to make an insanely horny part where every character is just ludicrously attractive. There's a stand called Doggy Style, Craftsdwarf. The man knows what he's doing.
All right. I guess another thing I was going to say is, like, obviously we'll talk about more, but maybe, and this is, maybe this is less on part 8 specifically, like, again, because I can't compare it that well to the old JoJo parts, but the ideas it was messing around with felt, like, interesting, like, just because it was just dealing with a lot of concepts, and that's possibly associated with me just, like, not having touched JoJo in a while and just being way better at reading into stuff now.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, like, that's, well, we'll talk about it, but, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's hard because it's a mystery. Like, there are some series where your hands really aren't that tied, and without spoilers, you can talk about a lot of shit, right? But because this part's a mystery, it's really hard to talk about without us getting into spoilers, because every single thing we want to talk about comes out of a reveal that you could consider like a spoiler in some ways, right? Mm-hmm. So I almost
like we've even already spoiled a couple things that are happen relatively early, but they're still spoilers, right?
So yeah, I do want to probably get into spoilers before we talk about anything.
No,
else.
Yeah, we talked for a half an hour without spoiling anything for a part that it's hard to talk about without spoiling. So I think that's fine.
All right, cool.
So I'm ready to move on to spoilers.
Yeah, me too. I love Jobin.
Yeah, he's good.
We can start with Jobin. Jobin is so good. Like, actually, I really think like everything with him and like this idea that he embodies, right? Of we will win because I am righteous. And the reason that he feels like he's righteous is because everything he's doing is for his family and to break the curse. And I fucking love that.
Right, like he cares about the family so much that he's even willing like to throw away like their integrity. Like that was a big way he clashed with Norisuke because he was more about like tradition and doing things. They're like upholding the brand basically, where Jobin was willing to like cheapen things and to survive. Basically. Right,
and then he gets into what I also like about Jobin is like at the beginning it comes off as okay. What are some of the bad things Jobin does? Right, he's working with the rock people. Right. He's not telling because Jobin is literally like the prime example of a character where if he just had a conversation with these motherfuckers, the story would have resolved itself in like chapter like 30. Mm-hmm. Maybe not completely because some of the stuff that had to happen, but for the most part, yeah, like it literally was a thing where if he had talked to them, they could have worked together for a lot longer, and things would not have ended up so disastrous by the end, especially for him. Which I do think he had like karmic retribution. You could even see it as like the family won because a lot of the family's actions were righteous, but his actions weren't, so he didn't win. And then he slowly devolves into being more and more of a bad guy, right? Like he kills people, and it is said that he knew he wasn't going to kill him, but he does seriously injure his dad. And again, while he's doing it, he's crying about it. He's not happy that it's what he's doing, but he's still doing this and becoming this like villain.
No, there was a part where you were worried he was going to be the villain.
I was really worried because I really like him, and I'm glad he wasn't the main villain. But I'm also glad he didn't really get redeemed. I'm glad that the series didn't try to redeem him after what he did, and it was just kind of instead that he was just a bad guy, and he did bad things, but he was doing it for his family, so it's at least like understandable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. but like, he was willing to make those sacrifices, and something that the part is kind of like, very much examining is like those kind of sacrifices, right? Like I especially think about this sort of analogy with Rai and the strawberries, where he had these strawberries who were like, that were really delicious, and the reason they were able to like be so good is because he had these other like lower quality strawberry patches that he let be attacked by pests and stuff.
Right.
So he's like kind of throwing away the many for the few, and that kind of works into like what the rock people are planning to do by selling the Rokakaka to the rich people so that they can be immortal at the expense of everybody else.
Well, even the idea of the Rokakaka is about sacrifice, right? Because it's equivalent exchange. Mm-hmm. So you're sacrificing something to get something else.
Right, and that's the kind of thing that I thought was interesting, because they do keep throwing around equivalent exchange a lot, and the Rokakaka is interesting because it's like, it does so in a kind of an objective way. Like, there was even the dilemma brought up where it's like, okay, what if you eat it to solve like a small cut, and it takes a small cut out of your brain and you fucking die in exchange, right? Because it views things objectively. Like, obviously, a bit of your skin and a bit of your brain are not equal to a human being, but to, this plant it is, right? And that's why, even though it exchanges something equally, like, obviously the people will do it because they don't see it as equal, right? Like, the baseball player who got his arm healed did not see that as, a bad thing, or did not see losing his mouth for that as a bad thing, right? And so, like, so yeah, it does kind of feed into that, like, overall conflict that it talks about, which was neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even think, like, sacrifice ties in a lot to the part, but you could even look at it even with, like, Ray in that instance, almost like...
I thought it was Rai.
Rai, it might be Rai, I don't know. I'll say Rai, because that's what you think it is, and you're smarter about it.
I wrote it down as Rai.
Yeah,
so,
you're smarter than me about it. He's mainly called his other name, and I don't even... It's like M something.
Yeah, no... I don't remember.
I always called him the fruit appraiser in my head, because he's called that just as much.
I understand. Yeah.
But, like, that's even a thing that works in with Rai, is that, he sees, like, in the arc where they're on the power lines, Josuke's not making sacrifices, right? He's not willing to give up Yasuho and just let her become a sacrifice, and that's when he wins Rai over as a person. Where originally Rai's only working with him because Norisuke said you were good. And Norisuke is also a person who doesn't make sacrifices, right? He doesn't sacrifice his dignity. He doesn't sacrifice what he feels like needs to be done just for the outcome, right? And I think that's kind of, you could look at that as like a major idea in the part of that sacrifice, is that, like, you have these two characters who aren't sacrificing things, right? Like, they're pushing forwards with with like true, like, righteousness, right? And they are right, and that's why they win. Is because of that, which is so good and so cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, I also, like, idea-wise recognize why you really like this part, because it's the fucking friendship part. Not that the other parts weren't, but, like, that's what they even say, like, what does JoJolion mean? It's, like, the shape of a heart, or the heart, rather, and, like, the bonds between people, and, like, that's why, ultimately, like, the Higa Shikata family is able to, like, surpass, because the rock people, like, as we see in their backstory, they're basically parasitic, right? Like, they can't form meaningful bonds with people because they were raised, like, to be parasite. Like, they're born, like, their babies, like, attach onto queen bees and become the queen bee and get fed by, like, they're inherently like, that's even kind of like, again, the strawberry thing, where they're a one that is, able to live by the, sacrifices and deaths of many others, like, by exploiting them. And that, because they're raised like that, they, because, Toru is, like, able to, he knew Yasuho, and even at the end, he's begging for her to help him, but he's not doing so because he values her at all. He's doing so because he values himself.
Right. He values her usefulness, and that's why he stuck around her. And that's what's so interesting, and that's why he sees her, she's useful, is because in that flashback where you see a kid she uses Paisley Park twice. So he can immediately see that usefulness and the usefulness that stand gives, and is trying to get help from him. Whereas Josuke values Yasuho as a person and cares about her as a person and not in a parasitic way. So when he needs Paisley Park at multiple times, but then especially for fucking Soft and Wet Go Beyond, one of the greatest, coolest things I've ever seen in my fucking life.
It's a fucking power that is made from the bond of Josefumi and Kira. It is their friendship that made
awesome.
Josuke. And, like, it's the fucking friendship power.
It's so good.
Like, of course you like it.
It's so fucking good, and it's so cool. And the fact that he can't even use it.
And I like it too, don't get me wrong.
He can't even use it without his friendship, because he didn't find out about it until his friendship with Rai resulted in you know, him using it for the first time. Well, really using it for the first time. And then to use it to attack, he had to use his relationship with Yasuo and use Paisley Park. Like, it's fucking awesome, because then it's like you literally have this thing where, you know, Yasuo is doing everything she can to help Josuke because they have a bond where he, like, does care about her, and it's not like a parasitic thing, but you know, Toru just wants to use her and she doesn't help him. It's great.
Yeah, and, like, you know, that's another part that's good about the relationship, is because, like, you know, you could say that they're using each other, so to speak, but they're not, like, doing so maliciously, right? Like Yasuo even said, like, you know, when I pulled him out of the dirt, it was, like, him helping me up, right? Like, so they're using each other, but they also, like, do legitimately care about each other, because, like, he got a lot of help from her, because he had no fucking idea what was going on, because he lost his memories, but she helped him for no reason, and because of that, like, he cared for her. And, you know, like, yeah, and that's also why Joshu is a piece of shit, because he's more like a rock person than a human being, because he is parasitic and only one, like, especially with the way at the end when he's like, oh, I'll heal your arm, I'll do the equivalent exchange Rokakaka with you, and then once it actually happens, he's like, oh, wow, I regret all of this immediately, and he's just being a giant piece of shit, right? Like, fuck Joshu, he's a bitch. Like, he's good, but he's a piece of shit, right? Like,
yeah, it's so, God, it's so fucking good. And you touched on it, so I guess I do want to move back to fucking, before I even, because you can't talk about, like, Josuke as a character, right? Without talking about Kira and Josefumi.
Yes.
Because, like, you know, I love that, you know, Josuke's character starts as him trying to figure out who he is. And the tricks that they play with Kira and knowing that, like you can't read part 8 without at least reading part 4 and 7, because, like, a major fucking part of, like, the way the part is structured is you think that you're reading about fucking Kira Yoshikage, so you think you're reading about a serial killer.
Yeah, exactly. That becomes, like, a point of tension, because, like, you're supposed to know, oh yeah, Kira, right? And even, like, the Kira that we do see isn't obviously, you know, that Kira, right? He's still kind of a weirdo and not the nicest dude, but also he's, like, a doctor and he does, like, help people, right? Like, especially what I think about is how, like, there was the surfer who he, like, tormented, basically, because he's just like, are you a man of the sea or are you a man of the land? And he's just, like, being kind of a piece of shit, but that's not, like, you know, and part of that was to build up into the, like, you know, oh wait, Kira, you know, appears to have trapped this woman in his house, and did, you know, hurt this dude for whatever reason, like, what the fuck is going on, right? But, yeah, he ultimately, like, and yeah, I do like how that was handled with Josuke and his identity, where it's like, because especially when you tie it to what Kira was saying, where are you a man of the sea or are you a man of the land? Well, you know, obviously a surfer, you know, maybe they are both. Like, maybe it's something in between. Like, Kira wasn't accepting that, you know, it's not a binary thing, but it could, you know, it's more of a spectrum. And that also ties to Josuke's identity. Is he Kira or is he Josefumi? Well, he's both, but he's neither, right?
Right. And yeah, I mean, I want to get really into that arc late, like, after we talk about Kira and Josefumi, because, like, that's my favorite part of the manga. Is
the flashback?
No. The flashback's phenomenal, and I literally was pulling up 3 screenshots from the flashback. I'm sure you know which moment it is. But no, Josuke kind of deciding I'm not Josefumi Kuja, or I need to go look at what he says, and I'm going to because I saved it. But when he basically says to Rai before he steps out of the car to, like, get the ship, like, fucking murdered, like to basically almost die to go to the hospital, where he says, Gashikata Josuke, is fucking awesome. Because, and, like, that entire part of his character, and, like, what he says before he tells Holly he's gonna save her, all of that shit's so good. But no, I fucking love, like, I love the way that the manga plays around from the beginning with what you think of Kira, but then he still has Killer Queen. So you get to see Killer Queen, and like it doesn't even try to explain what, like, again, like you have to have read part 4 for this part, because so many things, like Yasuho is Koichi, right? And it even kind of plays around with some of those ideas, and especially the stuff with Kira and the way it plays around with Kira, and the fact that, like, you know, you see Killer Queen, it doesn't tell you what sheer heart attack is, but when Kira uses sheer heart attack, you're like, I know what that is. I saw Act 3 make his gravity 1 billion. Like, it's awesome.
No, yeah, it's like, look, if you wanted to be a filthy part skipper, like, you still like, the only ones I think you could reasonably skip are 5 and 6, right? Because it really doesn't reference them at all, and neither does part 7. But you need to have read 1 through 4, 7, and then 8, right? Like, that's bare minimum, because it references so much on even part 2. Like, in one of the last 2 chapters, you see Joseph, and he's got the clackers, and he's got Purple Hermit, right? That's part 2 and 3, right? So it's like, it's still referencing on that stuff. And of course the fact that, like, Josuke, his, you know, sort of parent is Josefumi, who's named after Joseph's Joestar, which is kind of meant to be a weird reference to how Josuke is Joseph's son, right? In part 4, right? Like, it's just like with extra steps, I guess. But, you know, it's still like, yeah, there's lots of references. And, yeah, then it expects you to know the names, like Kujo, Hidegashikata, Yoshikage. Like, it expects you to know what characters had those names and why it's important that these characters have those names, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking great. And here's the moment from that flashback that I fucking cried at this shit. When Josefumi's talking about how everyone abandoned him, because it plays off of those ideas you have of Kira. Where he's like, everyone's abandoned me, so I'm going to do the abandoning first. And Kira fucking, like, is willing to sacrifice himself for this guy that he feels like he just roped in. Like, unknowingly.
Yeah, that was really good. And, like, especially, like, the way, you know, they both care about Holly a lot. And, yeah, Kira, like, yeah, he's been abandoned by everyone, but not fucking, of all characters, Yoshikage Kira. Like,
right. It's, like, playing off of what you expect.
Like, how are you gonna have Kira come in and just be a friendship man? Like, you can't do that. Like, Araki, motherfucker.
It's so good. And I love that even just with Holly, really quick, like, there are so many characters that are doing what they're doing because of Holly. Like, there's at minimum 5. That Holly is a major influence for them, right? Because there's Josefumi, there's Kira, there's Nijimura, there's Josuke, and there's Yasuho.
Right.
Where all 5 of them care about Holly a lot and want to do what they can for her. And that's, like, crazy. It's so good. I like it a lot. And then, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that flashback is so good. And then the fact that it just the way it ties into Josuke's whole character arc of him, you know, really coming to terms with once he realizes what happened to him and who he is. Then, like, because for the first part of it, a lot of him is just, he wants to figure out who he is. And then he learns that he's kind of no one.
Yes.
And so the way that he has to accept that he is no one, and then take that as a, you know, like he accepts that he is no one, and that means that he can he can make who he is.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, okay, so I pulled up what he said. So he says, my name is Higashikata Josuke. That's the name I use, but it's not really my name. It's just a temporary name. Like, paraphrasing, you know, he's like, there's no record of me. I don't exist. And then, you know, the Fruta Preacher goes, you're Josefumi Kujo. And he's like, half of me, but my mother wouldn't recognize me, you know, and, like, that's who he is. And so he feels like curing Holly's proof of his existence. And then after the Holly stuff, what he says is, what does he say? Oh, he says that even though, like, this is the part I love, is after everything, and he's there with Holly, after Holly basically saves his life, right? He says that his name is Higashikata Josuke. Like, that's when he fully accepts, like, he is not Kira or Josefumi, and he shouldn't try to pretend to be either of them, right? He is the person that he's been since Yasuho pulled him from the walleyes. And even that being said, Holly is still his mother, and he still does want to fix her.
Right,
but
because like he did have the emotional reaction to her even though like it wasn't from Higashi Kata Josuke necessarily. It was from the mixture of Kira and just Fumi because they both cared about her, right?
Because like his brain took parts from both, right? He has parts of Kira's brain, like he can do the Kira thing of immediately knowing like the length of something, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to like instantly measure something. Like he gives you Yasuo's measurements just off the top of his head because he just can, right? Mm-hmm. And I love that, and I love the way he like uses that, and I think just everything surrounding his character, from the idea behind it, right? Where he like I even love because Higashi Kata isn't actually the same. From what I've heard, it's not the same characters that it is in part 4 of JoJo's. So the Joe isn't actually in it.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right. Gotcha. No,
so
yes,
he's
you're right,
JoJo
now that you mention it, yeah.
from Josefumi Kujo.
Right.
Is how he's a JoJo. But the Joestar lineage comes from Kira Yoshikage.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Which, like, when I realized that, and the only reason I even put it together is because the translators and the scans I was reading, I don't know if they did it for you too, they put that...
I might have skimmed over it. On accident,
Fukujo and Josefumi, like both of those come from like the kanji that they're written with comes from different parts of JoJo's, but like different names that JoJo's have had in the past. Mm-hmm. So Josefumi Kujo is how he's a JoJo, but then the Joestar Bloodlines forget. Like that's so fucking good and such a great idea,
wild, right?
To like
because Josefumi isn't a Joestar rather, but yeah, Kira comes from that bloodline. Okay, yeah. So okay, yeah, you're right. That's good.
Because even like the way,
yeah, I guess that goes back to the neither but both thing. Because he wouldn't be JoJo if he wasn't both of them, even though he's also neither of them, right?
Right. Yeah. Like when you work like the main, like one of the like the main arc and then the main like theme of his character into how he's able, because there are criteria to be the main character of a part of JoJo's. And so when you can work that criteria into the theme and his character arc, it's fucking insane and so cool.
Yeah, no, I didn't pick up on that. That is really cool.
I love Josuke so much. I love Soft and Wet is such a cool stand. And the minute that I'm sold, both times I read it, because by the way, the first time I stopped was in the Tsurugi arc where he's like fucking with Yasuo. And if I had read 3 more chapters, I would have gotten to Jobin and gotten to the fucking beetle fight, which is like one of the coolest
beetle
parts
tendency.
Of the manga.
I love the fact that everyone calls it beetle tendency because it's so funny.
I didn't know people called it beetle tendency. That's fucking amazing.
No, that fight was really good. What were some other good stand? I like the way it resolved with who was it? It was the one with Tsurugi made see everyone as Jobin, so he was like trying to follow Jobin, and it was a bus, and he got hit by a fucking bus.
Yeah, he had a different piece of origami that could make him see his buses. That one was fine.
I just like the way it ended.
Yeah,
there was a guy with the cyclone. That was the ability that I made. What were some other good ones?
I mean, so my favorites are it's that
the final one, of course.
Yeah, the final one, Ozone Baby.
Ozone Baby was wild, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean the Beatles, so Beetle Tendency, Ozone Baby, the final fight, and there's one more. I
like the one with I forget the name, but the guy from the flashback who attacks the manor and
and then the
melt.
Flashback is in the middle of it. Vitamin C.
Vitamin C, that was the name, yeah.
I think there's
that was a good one I liked.
Other one that I like quite a bit. Well, yeah, I mean, I Ozone Baby is elite because King Nothing drives a fucking car. Or not King Nothing, Speed Baby drives a fucking car. The greatest shit I've ever seen. Oh my god. Let me look and see if I can remember it. Those might be all 4 of the fights. Yeah, I think those are the 4 fights that, like, I really like. And outside of that, it's like, there are ones that are fine or have, like Vitamin C, right? Outside of that, I think there are ones that are fine or, like, have good moments. Like, when Josuke removes the friction from the ceiling. Like, that's fucking awesome.
No, Soft and Wet is such a cool stand because he steals things and he gives them back, and it's just like it's so versatile.
Yeah, like when he uses it when he's underwater, right? And he's talking to Norisuke using the bubbles, taking the sound from his mouth, and then releasing them above the water is fucking cool. And so, yeah, I think he does a lot of really, really, really cool shit with his stand. His stand's really cool. But, yeah, I think some of the fights aren't great. But there are stands I fucking love. Like, You
mentioned King Nothing a lot.
Yeah,
like
I was going to say, I would be not a real person if I didn't sit here on this episode, post this, and say, I think King Nothing is my favorite stand design, visually. I love the design. I love the puzzle pieces, the way that they form together to make him. First of all, the level of like artist you have to be on to draw puzzle pieces making what looks like a 3D person. Because like, like he draws them and you get the sense you get the sense that it's like spherical in places, and then the way that the pieces break apart to build together what it catches the scent of. Yeah. Is fucking cool as well. Even if the stand doesn't do much, and really,
it's like as far as like abilities go, it's kind of like low tier, but even though it's really helpful,
the last thing the stand does is show you, or actually that's not true. But the last thing it does for like Josuke is show him that Jobin's been around Rokakaka fruit. So yeah, I mean like the stand doesn't do much, but it's such a fucking cool design. I love it. And then King Nothing. I mean, I think I sent it to you. If not, I sent it to someone else. There's a part where King Nothing's punching someone and yells "Speedy," and then
I don't think you sent it to me.
Also, drifts a car. Like a stand in JoJo's drifted a car. Craftsdwarf. It was so cool. I couldn't believe it.
Mario Drift.
Oh my god, yes!
I had to.
Paisley Park is hot. I would fuck Paisley Park. Have to say that as well.
I like Paisley Park's ability, too. It's just neat, like, just the way it kind of, it helps you out. And, I like that.
I love how it's 100% a support / information gathering ability. It is the perfect ability, my favorite Craftsdwarf character, it's the perfect ability for a
Koichi type,
a secondary character in a mystery series to have.
Okay, yeah.
Like because the series, like we were talking about, the series isn't action focused, and I don't usually use this term, but I'll use it this time. But like the Jobro of the part, their stand is only used for information gathering. Which is what you do in a mystery, is you gather information to build conclusions. And so it's not a surprise that Yasuho is the only one of like the who become like the 3-man gang that are on Josuke's side trying to solve the mystery, who knows where the fruit actually is. Because she's the one who can gather the most information so she can build the most sound conclusion.
Right. Yeah.
So I love her stand. It's so good. And yeah, I mean, I think the stands continue to be really interesting, and you'll get stands with just really out there cool powers, even if they're not used super great in fights. And a lot of the stands in this one weren't used for fights, right? They were used for things outside of that, and it's really cool.
Right, like Rai's power is one that, I mean, not that he never uses it in fights, but I felt like he just used it more outside of fights, right? Or didn't use it as much as he could, perhaps.
Yeah.
What other stands do I feel like mentioning? I don't know. Do you want to talk about Toru for a bit? Because I did see some people who weren't happy with him as the main antagonist, but like after finishing the part, like I think he's good.
Well, so before we talk about Toru, do you want to talk about Ozone Baby quickly? Then we end on Toru.
Go for it.
The main thing I want to say,
I was thinking about Ozone Baby when you were talking about stands, because that's a pretty standout one, maybe.
I agree. I mean, I think it's a really cool like power where like it's pressurizing things. So then they're on this time limit because they have to make something happen by the time they reach whatever pressure. But then also it ends up using Josuke's ability in the coolest way, where he puts the bubble around himself. So then he is inside in enclosed space.
Right, where he's not affected by pressure, right?
Which is fucking awesome. Think about it now, there's a bunch of stands that deal with opening or closing something, right? Because there's also Nijimura's stand where if you open a door,
yes,
she comes out. And then there's this one where you're attacked when you open a door. But yeah, I what I like about that fight so much is there's 3 parties going on. And what's so good to me about it is that, like, the party who ultimately wins that, which is Jobin's, doesn't win because he's right. Because, like, it's kind of made clear, like, him setting the orchard on fire was not a good thing. But he won because he had the most information, right? They were the only party that was aware that all 3 parties were acting independently and were the ones who were creating the situation that everyone else was reacting to.
Where Josuke and, they were like, well, he was like, okay, well, he assumed that the enemy stole the branch at first because, even technically saw it, but it was not the real branch.
Right.
But, no, yeah, that was a good one. That I did keep thinking about while you were talking about stands, just because, and also the fact that it affects such a big area is neat. Yeah. And, there was a conflict with 3 different parties in it. That was cool. So yeah,
it was 3 different parties that were acting independently, and at multiple times it felt like one of the parties was gonna win. It was so, like, cool and, like, just, like, a really great. Technically, there were 4 parties because Toru was there as well. Because Toru's there at the end. I mean, he only shows up at the end to kill poor Tom, but still, it's like.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right.
Like there's so much going on in that fight that I think, like, you can't. And, I mean, it is the fight where Speed King drifts a car. But it's, like, there's so much going on that you can't help but just, like, be drawn into, like, the layers that are being built on top of each other. That the layers that are built in that fight are what have to become unraveled going into the final arc for everything to kind of finish. Because that's when Jobin and Tsurugi really play, like, the long con and lie to everyone. And that persists until the series ends.
Yeah, pretty much. That maybe would that be the low point for the arc or the end of Act 2, so to speak, maybe, or not? I have to think about it because they seem to have lost the branch, and
the only other place it could be, would be when Josuke gets his injuries healed. And so when Josuke gets his injuries healed, says that actually I think it is when Josuke gets his injuries healed by Holly. Holly's goes into a coma. Because
that makes sense. Yeah,
after that is when he even though it is still technically all in the one arc, because then after that is when he goes and waits and says, I will be pursued. But yeah, we can talk about Toru. I want to hear what you have to say about Toru.
Because like the way I heard it was like, it doesn't make someone wasn't a fan of how the last villain was basically like, Yasuo's boyfriend, but like, he's not just Yasuo's boyfriend because he's also the director of the hospital. He's also the leader of the rock people. And, like, I don't know, especially, like, now all said and done, he just makes the most sense as the antagonist. And I liked him. It's like, once you consolidate that, like, as the head of the hospital and Toru, like, are they the same person? So everything he was saying on the stage as the head, like, factored into, like, how he thought about the world and what he was trying to do. And then, like, his ability, because I think that's just because, like, usually the whole thing with the last JoJo villains since part 3 is that they have abilities relating to, like, time or space in some way. Dio manipulated time. Kira could revert. Why can't my brain remember the name of his ability that reverse time
who?
Fuck, you know what it was? Kira.
Bites the dust.
Thank you. Why couldn't I remember it? But yeah.
That was easy for me because they're all Queen songs. So I just start thinking through Queen songs. Like, which Queen song is it?
But yeah, Diavolo erases time. Poochie had some I don't even fucking remember. It's been a while.
Well, Poochie has 3 stands, Craftsdwarf.
Yes.
He has 3 different stands throughout the part. But yeah, his final one accelerates time.
Valentine. Right. That was it. Thank you. And Funny Valentine.
He doesn't have a time stand.
Space.
That's the thing is he dimension hops. But if we're gonna be honest, and this is my biggest issue with part 7, Funny Valentine's not the final antagonist.
The last antagonist, right? Yeah.
The last antagonist is the world. Why? Why, Araki? I thought we were gone from that bullshit.
We have to reread it. Okay. Anyway. With like. Because I did see that complaint levied, but I'm still because Toru's power is still interesting to me because it more has to do with like fate and causality and luck, or specifically he says like the flow of logic, right? Which kind of ties back to what Norisuke was saying about how like, oh, the Higashikata fruit parlor is here because of the flow. Like it kind of, it's more about taking advantage of the way people move and the way fate works almost,
and even
right?
the way he uses the power, right? Where he puts people in positions where the only option they have is to try to make a move against him. And the minute you do that, his stand goes, right? And I think, that ties in well. I think also that deterministic nature works very well with Jobin, where he's very deterministic. And it's that because I will win because I'm right? It's this very deterministic, destiny-based mindset. And so I think that kind of goes across all of them, which is awesome.
I love the way Toru's defeated, because like when fucking mom, I forget her name, comes out with Tsurugi, because Toru had already eaten the fruit to make an equivalent stage, I'm just like, let's go, let's fucking go.
I love the way it works because it's putting what's worse, Toru's injuries or the entire Higashikata curse. It's so good.
And it's just so satisfying because you see, like, Toru gets exactly what's coming to him. Like, it kind of just works on that, like, karmic level of, and it's just so, it was so satisfying to watch that unfold.
That flow, right? That objective idea that is beyond, like, oh my fucking God. I'm like, I'm putting pieces together in my mind. All right.
You're tapping into the cosmos to understand JoJolion.
Like, a lot of JoJolion, right? There's like this, like the human aspect, and there's like the objective above that, right? That doesn't care about what humans think, what humans want, or even what rock humans think.
The Rokakaka, right?
The Rokakaka. Yeah. Even you could argue Toru's stand is kind of that, right? Where it's above this it's on this like cosmic level where it's working with cosmic powers and creating these scenarios through things that are kind of just going to happen, right? Soft and Wet goes beyond, breaks that. The bond between Kira and Josefumi goes above. It works on that cosmic level where, like, those relationships are above that, and that's why Soft and Wet Go Beyond is able to beat it, right? And then Toru loses due to that objective thing, right? The same thing that puts him in the situation he's in to win causes him to lose, because when he's put up against something that is worse than what he's dealt with, he loses to that. And he's put in that situation through an ability that, like, is also like a cosmic thing that works outside the realm of logic and outside the realm of like the
You mean the new Rokakaka? Or
no, Soft and Wet Go Beyond.
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, I thought you were talking about. Sorry, I thought you. What we're talking about. Okay, now I see what you mean. Yeah. Oh, his injuries. I thought.
Right. Like his injuries, like he's put there because
the equivalent exchange, rather.
No. So there's loud ass noise going on outside my apartment right now. It sounds like people are setting off fireworks, which I don't fucking know why. Maybe the football team won. I'm in a college town. There's college football games. There was one tonight. I assume they won, but they were playing like some dog shit Texas college, so of course they won. But no. Yeah, like it definitely feels like the kind of thing where it works so well in that aspect of it being this, large cosmic, all that shit with Toru is great. And I love the way, again, he's using people. He's not trying to help people. I do understand the argument that people could have. And while I don't agree with it, I could, because again, it is a mystery. And obviously it's the kind of mystery where instead of all the players being out there from the beginning,
he only comes in like right before the last stretch, pretty much, and it's and in a very innocuous. Hey, I'm Yasuo. It's me, your ex, and that's it. And it's like, oh wait, because even when I was reading it, because I was spoiled, and I was like, it's kind of weird a little weird that this guy is the final antagonist. But then, like, again, once the mystery is solved and we find out who he really, he's also the head director. He's also like really fucking old. Like, it all just clicked into place for me, right? And it works, I think.
Yeah, but, and it even works through these like other ways where like like I love that Josuke is initially very like wary of him because he likes Yasuo and you know what I mean? Like that causes him to be distrustful.
Like, that's just like that's just even like, even if he wasn't a big bad, he's still an ex-boyfriend, right? Like,
but then he ends up being the big bad, so the Josuke is like right for acting like that, which is fucking awesome. And yeah, that even ties in with like the past, right? And like you kind of break outside of the past, right? Josuke breaks outside of his past, of the two people he was, to become who he is now. Yasuho literally has to basically kill her ex-boyfriend so she can have a future with her new boyfriend. And the Higashikata are trying to break their curse. It all is very good and like ties together really well. I like it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess there's another reoccurring idea with like mothers protecting their children, like which happens with Tsurugi, and it happens with Holly and Josuke basically. But because at the end, yeah, it is kind of sad, that Holly wasn't able to be saved, right?
Wait, she was.
Make a very wait, what?
So I'm like fully confident on this.
Okay, because they were making a big point about how there is like no more chances the new Rokaka.
It's a weird thing
again,
where it's never directly said, right? But okay, here's why I'm almost confident she was saved. So Josuke had rock on him from the Lokakaka solution, right?
Okay.
Which is the same thing that had happened to Holly, right? And you know how it kept being said that Soft Wet Go Beyond was the thing that could essentially like
break causality,
right? And it would save Holly. When he finally masters Go Beyond, right, and uses it to injure Toru the first two times, his rocks are gone. That rock in front of his eye is gone from then on out in the story, right? Because, like, look here. Let me see if I have the pages I'm trying to show. So,
Vindy, you big brain motherfucker.
Yeah. So when he uses Soft and Wet Go Beyond right here, right? He most of the rock on him is gone, especially the one in front of his eye is gone, right? It's sending. When he first uses Soft and Wet Go Beyond, it shows him going to Holly's hospital room. I didn't save it.
Okay.
I don't think.
Oh, sad.
Let me look. No, I didn't save it. He goes to Holly's hospital room. So I feel like when you put those things together, right? The fact that his rock was disappeared, because he then also doesn't have it in the final chapter, right? So when you put together using Soft and Wet Go Beyond caused the rocks on him from it to disappear, and then it shows you that he goes to Holly's hospital room. While it's not shown that he saved her, right? And we don't see from Araki like drawing him saving her, you can put two and two together and assume that he did.
See, that's another part of the reason why I want to reread all of JoJo, because Araki is a fucking crazy person. So there's a whole big write-up kind of like giving a potential idea of explaining basically what the fuck happened at the end of part 6 that when I read it seemed to make a lot of fucking sense, which is part of why I like... So, like, because Araki will just do... Because he very much, like, he does a lot of telling, but he'll do stuff like this where he just shows and he doesn't tell you anything, right?
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Here, sorry, I'm trying to pull up because I can't. For some reason, my phone's not wanting to send it. So I was trying to find it online. So in this page, right, and this is after he had like that big rock in front of his eye that Araki was drawing every time he drew Josuke. Right, it was very clear that it was in front of his eye. Right, you remember what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have it here.
Yeah, he still has like a little bit of rock on his face, but you're right, it's not over his eye.
So like clearly, Soft and Wet Go Beyond was able to take it away, which to me means that then because he went to Holly's hotel room, he was able to save her. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. It's just like that's something I would have to like go double check to be 100% sure, but no, I believe you.
Yeah, and I mean obviously, it could be wrong, right? And maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5 in the sense that Araki didn't show that because he didn't think it happened. But
I don't know, maybe Araki trusts his audience enough to let them put 2 together and make 4, right?
Right.
So,
like it is one of those things where like when I looked back, because like I remember someone saying like he didn't save Holly, and I was thinking about it and I was like, well, wait, because I keep remembering hearing like Rai kept saying, this ability you don't know is the thing that will save Holly, right? It is like he would say it's the key to defeating Toru, and it's the key to saving Holly. And so like, well, did he save Holly? And then I remembered, I was like, wait, he doesn't have the rocks over his eye when he uses Go Beyond. So then I went to look, and it does show him going to Holly's room, even if we don't see him saving her. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, yeah. So it's possible he did save Holly. And because I think outside, like if he hadn't, the last chapter, he would have mentioned that he was still trying to save her, right? Because he was so determined to.
Gotcha. I see. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah. There's a couple more things I want to talk about. I feel, or did we have more to say about Toru and the general like final like encounter?
I didn't know.
Okay. Johnny.
Yeah. Okay. Oh my god, I'm glad you remember this. Johnny shooting himself in the head to save his kid is like the most fucking awesome thing. Like, that is Johnny, and I fucking love it. And like, that's right, because at that point I wasn't in love with Josuke yet. So I was like, yeah, like Johnny did something fucking awesome. Johnny's the best character in this manga, because it's early on, you get this Johnny flashback, and you kind of see more of him, which I love, because I fucking love Johnny.
No, no, like he gets together with a completely, or like, you know, the Higashi Kato's, and yeah, we find more about what happened after the fact. The one other thing I realized is because I was just thinking about the Rokakaka again, or specifically the new Rokakaka. I think I fucked that one up. I've been pretty good about not doing that.
Look, no one's gonna give you shit for fucking it up. It's hard to get.
So, because the whole point, the special thing about the new one is that it's able to transfer things between people, right? Mm-hmm. It's also, like, mentioned how, like, the fact that it happened at all is kind of a miracle because of the walleyes. It happened because of Kira and Josuke. It happened because of, like, grafting onto another tree. Like, you know, it's probably not going to happen again.
I have another fucking theory about the walleyes, but I'll get to there when you're done with your point.
Yes, because, okay, that's good. But what I realized is that here's this fruit that was created by a miracle that is closer to the, because like Josuke did the equivalent Johnny did the equivalent exchange not through the Rokakaka, but through the corpse, the miracle creating Jesus Christ corpse. So
Craftsdwarf, I got you.
I just realized, I realized while reading, like, hey, wait, they're both kind of like, you know, like basically this fruit is closer to, you know, this divine artifact, right?
Right.
But what were you gonna say?
The walleyes are because of Jesus.
Okay.
I would almost put money that if you asked Araki, he would agree. Because what does Johnny do with Jesus' corpse? He plants it under Morio. There's a specific tree that you constantly see by where the walleyes are. He plants Jesus' corpse under that, right? So, like, the minute that I saw that, and then it was like the tree and the hill that you see is like a major walleye, I was like, the walleyes are Jesus.
That would, because that's what he does. He trades things from one thing to the other. So it makes sense that the corpse, maybe it's still somewhere buried there. Maybe it's just maybe it's decayed more, right? Because it's a fucking corpse and it's not being preserved anymore. It's been there for literally like decades, right? So, but yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because that's what I was going to bring up, some of the other mysteries that were never resolved. But and maybe it's because they're building up to part 9. Mm-hmm. Maybe you know, I don't believe in the meme because, and I believe there's even a whole video series taking down various Araki forgot takes. Because I think either like sometimes people are just stupid, like think, oh, Araki was going to do this time travel plot in part 4 because the guy in the flashback looked exactly like Josuke, and it's like, calm down. The thing is, like, that doesn't mean he forgot, right? Like, we know all the, like, another great example of Araki forgot, right? Using, I know it's the part Craftsdwarf that you can't say anything about, and I'm sorry for doing it, but using part 5, Araki has literally stated before, and it's one of the sweetest things I've ever heard a man say in my life, that originally he wanted Fugo to stay with them and be a traitor and basically turn on Bucciarati and, like, the gang, right? But he didn't do that because he couldn't do that to Bucciarati. Ah, okay. I do remember that because Fugo's the one who left, right?
Yeah, and, Fugo leaves.
Purple Haze.
Yeah. And I love Fugo, but yeah, like that's the thing, and like that just shows that like authors will change their story. Yeah, he might have been originally going to do something with time travel where Josuke saves himself, right? It doesn't mean he forgot because he didn't do it. It meant the story changed.
No, like, we've talked about this with Dragon Ball too, where it's like Toriyama, the way he wrote the story seems very whimsical, but he's mentioned that he does think about it a lot, even though, like, yeah, he doesn't plan for things, right? And he does forget character. Well, because he's designed so many characters, like, you know, in the Oda interview, he's like, Tao Pai Pai, did I draw a character like that? Yeah, but I think it's still, like, very much overstated, especially in the case of Araki, where, like, he's been doing his story for so long, like, I think it's kind of silly to just... So, because, like, there are totally things that just don't get directly addressed, but you've even, like, just talking about it, like, you've pointed out some things that maybe go, oh, right? Like, another thing that never comes up that I was looking for and I didn't find was the nearly drowned kid who was mentioned in the same newspaper that Yasuo was looking up stuff about Johnny, I think, right?
Right.
Remember, like, I don't remember that ever coming up again.
Could that nearly drowned kid have been Josefumi?
No, because I think that was well before. You mean the original Joseph Joestar? Joseph?
No, you're right. I'm sorry. I forgot what you were talking about. But yeah, I see what you mean.
No, yeah, because I did make that connection where how it is kind of similar to how Josephumi was abandoned and nearly drowned. But like I don't know. I'd have to look at like a timeline and see. Okay, what age was this kid? What characters would have been that age? And I couldn't make a connection, right? Or another thing is like you connected the corpse to the walleyes. I don't remember why Josuke had bite marks.
So I think the bite marks were associated with the stands.
Oh, okay.
Because, and the reason I say that, and so here's why it was a little weird that she had Paisley Park, or in that flashback, and we went back and saw that. Because if you remember, Yasuho also has the bite marks, and they're like getting inflamed, and like she's really bothered by them in that arc where she's first using Paisley Park for the first time that we see.
Okay.
So I assumed that the bite marks were like that part's version of the arrow, right, or something.
Okay. Oh, I gotcha.
And so like the bite marks are what, but then like that is also kind of destroyed because, well, I guess we don't know, right? Josephumi could have had the bite marks from before. But I saw it as that like the bite marks were associated with the walleyes and them getting their stand, but that might not be true. But that was what.
Well, I mean, you already mentioned that Yasuho had her stand as a kid, and
right.
Both Josephumi and maybe not Josephumi, but definitely Kira already had his stand, right?
Well, no, we know Josephumi had Software because Josephumi's the one who grafted the Rokukaka.
Right. No. Yes, you're right. And yeah, so they both had their stands before they merged, and their stands were also merged into Soft and Wet, with the bubbles rather. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there with the Giga Brain theory, because like I've already been surprised about JoJolion, right? Like, right. And I guess the last thing is, what did you think about the last two chapters with Lucy?
Okay.
And Joseph Joestar.
I have never in my life pogged over Hermit Purple, but I lost my shit when that motherfucker pulled him out. Like, I never thought I would see Hermit Purple and go, poggers! But that's what happened. No, it's great. I like it.
Yeah, so like it was cool. I guess maybe people were hoping it would be more significant. Like I guess it, follows up on Lucy Steele's character a bit. And like it does make the, Josephumi, Josuke connection, right?
Yeah, which is cool.
Which, like I said, it's part 4, but with, but with extra steps. So maybe there'd be something I noticed more on a reread. And like, because that's the thing, is because I guess some people were unsatisfied, and maybe there's some other mysteries that weren't touched on that I feel like I saw some, but I don't remember what they were. But because like I don't know, I'm still pretty satisfied with part 8 as it is, especially now that like my eyes are opened regarding other things that I could have missed, and because I've only read it all the way through once, and I read the first half through twice, I guess. Again, there is still the possibility of part 9 like going back and addressing something. I wouldn't expect it. I'm not using that as like a defense necessarily, so to speak, but it's like, because I don't have too much of a problem in the first place, but I'm just saying like that's all, it's a possibility, right? Especially the way he's just going right into it, right? The Rockies were probably been thinking about part 9 for a while. Like, I'm pretty sure, I don't have an interview, I vaguely remember seeing it, I might just be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned having, or at least he mentions part 7, 8, and 9, like a while, like I think, I feel like I just expected part 9 to be a thing for a while now, which would imply that he's been thinking about it for a while.
I always saw it as like, part 9 would definitely happen. And I don't know. I mean, I would love if part 9, and even I feel like, and maybe I'm looking into it too much, but I almost feel like the term JoJoland implies that and maybe people thought this was JoJolion as well, right? But I feel like JoJoland, like that makes me think. And part of it is also because, like, thinking about it realistically, Araki can't do a part 10. He's too old.
Yeah.
He's like 61, 62.
If part
8 took 10 years.
If part 9 takes another 10, he's going to be 70. And at that point, like, he's not going to be able to draw the manga anymore.
Yeah, like, that is the last part that realistically could be drawn with any consistency. And I think that, I'm sure Araki will have, like, things that have happened with other manga, right? Miura. The fact that, let's be real, Hunter x Hunter is probably never coming back on his mind, where he won't want to leave his story unfinished, So a large part of me does hope part 9 is the last part and JoJo's can be finished and end. But to go back really quickly to the Holly stuff, my only thing is I don't fully know why Radio Gaga took place after when it did, right? Like it felt a little weird to have like the main conflict end and like this great monologue by Yasuho about JoJolion being a story about breaking a curse, right? Which you could even see as like that is it. The story is about overcoming the natural,
Yeah, see, because and like luckily we do get like the last couple of pages of the last chapter where it does go back to the present basically. But I guess like because mostly we see Toru there briefly, right, stealing the Rokakaka. And like that maybe couldn't have happened before, like definitely not before the final fight because we're not even like unless we like it was more vague as to who stole the fruit, but I guess like it being Toru just makes the most sense, right? And so yeah, I guess it is a little weird, and I think some people were comparing it to the end of part 5, but I don't remember that. I just remember like how part 5 ended, where it goes does like a flashback thing, right? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it ruins the part at all. I do think it was like a little weird, but ultimately it's fine because it does come after the conflict is settled. So it's like, okay, I have this. Yeah. And then you do end with some of my favorite shit, which is like showing that like not only has Josuke accepted that he's a Higashikata, but the Higashikata is outside of just, Norisuke accepting because he feels like he has some value from Josuke, right? Which is what he even originally says. Like, I feel like you will make my family happy because if you get Kira's memories back, you will know where some things are that we need, right? It literally becomes like you don't have Kira's memories, and that's okay. You are a part of the family. Down to we are going to let you choose. Like even Joshu is telling him to choose the cake that they're going to use to celebrate Norisuke getting out of the hospital. Like he is a member of that family by the end, and I fucking love that.
Yeah, it's good.
Like that shit just like after everything with Josuke of him accepting that he was Higashikata Josuke and like making that like a part of who he was, then having like it just everything. I thought it just all came together so well and was super good, and I fucking loved it.
Yeah. So, do you have more to discuss, or shall we move on to final thoughts?
I probably don't have much more to say. I think I got through everything. The only thing I talked about how I think Jesus is the cause of the walleyes. I think I've talked about everything. Okay.
So yeah, final thoughts. I would give it an 8 out of 10. I liked it. I am looking forward to rereading all of JoJo, including JoJolion. It's got some really good stuff there. It's interesting, especially talking about it and realizing, being more things. Yeah, it just makes me like really want to go through JoJo again, and that's good. Go ahead.
After I finished, I was hesitant between an 8 and a 9. I wasn't sure. But after talking about it, it's a 9. Like, it's so good. I think there's so much great shit in there. And I think things are all tied together in a way that, like, I didn't even get, like, until we really talked about it. Yeah, it's a 9. I think it's, like, really, really solid. It's really great. I love Josuke. Soft and Wet Go Beyond is, like, the coolest shit I've ever fucking seen. Not the coolest shit. Act 4 is cooler. But... like it's just great. It's just so good. And
oh yeah, no, I was losing my mind when I was like attaching it to the idea of like the spin, where it's just like it's able to break the rules in a similar way.
Yeah, I was so ready for them to bring up the spin from part 7, and they didn't. But I almost felt like they didn't have to because it was like the spin.
I feel like it's implied.
Yeah,
right?
The spin and the spiral, right? Like it's a very similar thing. So yeah, it's like this cool building off of like the core power outside of stands in part 7,
right? But I mean, even Johnny's last thing was like this golden spiral, right? So, but anyway, so that about covers it for JoJolion. It'd be cool to talk about JoJo more in the future, but I don't know what'll happen.
We'll see what happens with that, but I would not be surprised if there's more JoJo discussion on
we'll be talking about that privately, and we'll see what happens. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Hope you enjoyed the discussion.
Adios, muchachos.